The city of Hamilton is on deck to get a brand new 13-kilometre-long light rail transit line, and the province of Ontario has promised to pay 100% of the capital cost to make it happen. Cue the ribbon cutting, right? Not so fast, because not everyone in Hamilton wants the LRT, even if it's free. Joining us now to explain, two Hamilton City Councillors. Matthew Green, who represents Ward 3, which is Hamilton Centre, and Terry Whitehead, who represents Ward 8, which is the West Mountain.
Correct.
Nice to have you two here from the greatest city in the world.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. All right. Just before we have our conversation, let's bring the rest of the province up to speed with what you two already know. There's the map. Here's what's planned. Government of Ontario planning to cover 100% of the capital costs to build the LRT, and it has promised to spend up to $1 billion. The expected opening date for the LRT, if the shovels go in the ground soon, 2024. Its two lines would be 13 kilometres long. They'd have up to 17 stops, budget permitting, and it would connect the Hamilton GO Centre station and the West Harbour GO station. At the risk of tempting you to tell me every single thing you think about this, let's just get your positions on the record to start with. Yay or nay?
Absolutely pro-LRT and pro-transit.
How come?
Well, you know, there's going to be people who say it's about moving people and it's strictly about transit. I believe it's about city building. I believe it's not about just moving people from point A to point B, but I think it's about moving Hamilton from point A to point B. And it presents a once-in-a-lifetime investment in infrastructure, jobs, and development right through the heart of Hamilton.
Terry, your view?
Well, I'm somewhat skeptical. I have traveled around Seattle, or Portland. I've been to San Diego more recently, New York, San Francisco. I've read over 40 reports, and we're not Toronto. We have a limited financial capacity. If something goes wrong, it could go significantly wrong in regards to the financial risk of the taxpayers. So, and what I mean by that is I'm all supportive of the better use of our road systems. I'm very supportive of public transit systems, but I believe taxpayers want to see real value in dollars being spent. And I'm skeptical for getting value for this particular investment.
We need to follow up on that because people will have just heard me say twice, what do you mean? You're getting it for free.
It's free.
So what's the cost to the Hamilton taxpayer?
Well, it's like somebody offering a free timeshare. Nothing's ever free. The reality is that the operating costs, the maintenance costs will still be something that has to be negotiated with the City of Hamilton. If you look at Toronto on the Eglinton line, unbeknownst to them, they end up with an $80 million operating cost for that particular system. And I believe some even the capital is going to, there's an argument with Mississauga if they're going to cover 444,000 or 4.4 million. Can't remember what the exact number is. So there is a significant ongoing annualized cost. And when you take a look at how many people actually benefit from the service versus the cost, that's what I talk about value.
Matthew, are you concerned that the operating and maintenance costs have not been fully factored into your thinking?
Well, it's definitely a complex project. I mean, there's those who know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. So we're here talking about value. We heard that $80 million operating cost. We happen to spend $80 million a year on roads. So over the last 10 to 12 years, we've already spent $1 billion on roads. We know about induced demand. In fact, Toronto is facing the same problems. Municipalities across the province are facing the same challenges where they can't afford the infrastructure they have already. So this idea of one person in one car is antiquated, it's inefficient, and it is counter to everything that we're talking about as it relates to climate change and urbanism.
That may be, but that doesn't speak to whether or not Hamiltonians are prepared to pony up more to operate and maintain this line. What do you think?
This is the most popular line that we have. It has the highest ridership, and I know people will go back to this ridership issue. But at the end of the day, it costs less to operate a train than it does to operate a bus. And in fact, part of this deal and what makes it incredible, where the real value is that they have the life cycle costs of capital. So the province has already offered to pay for these trains to be replaced. In Hamilton, if we were to put more buses on, if we were to try to go BRT, we would be on the hook for that, and we'd be on the hook for the operating costs. So yes, there's complexity. We have a subcommittee, which Councillor Whitehead is on. We talk about these critical issues, and I can say to his credit, he's brought up some very valid points. The discussion is a complex discussion. It's a $1 billion infrastructure deal, but that doesn't mean we go down the road. And the fact remains that by 2041, we're going to have 800,000 people in Hamilton. So the question remains is, do we start building it then?
So that's almost 800,000. That's almost double what you've got today.
It's almost double.
All right. Yeah. In which case, let me ask you, Terry, how much input did the City of Hamilton, did the City Council in Hamilton have as to the route that the proposed LRT would take?
I think I need to sort of take some issues that have been raised. When you talk about more efficient use of our roadways using public transit system, you're not going to get any argument from me. I'm a big supporter of using dollars responsibly. And that is where the lines start separating in respect to this particular proposal. When I looked at San Diego, for example, they utilized the current rail system to provide a significant part of their LRT. To move people east-west along the waterfront, if anyone's been to San Diego. We currently have a rail system that the new 2 GO stations will be built on. One is currently being built, they're just finished being completed. Another one's proposed in Centennial. And it extends all the way to Niagara. So you can literally utilize infrastructure that's already in place, move people very quickly east to west toward downtown, and then create north-south routes in regards to bus transits. That would get value because it'd be a heck of a lot cheaper price to do so. And then you can take the balance of the dollars and address the significant deficiency and the big challenge the province of Ontario has, and that is driving an LRT or BRT system, a robust system from the mountain to the new GO station, which would eventually become our Union Station, which will go through the largest population of the city. Let's be clear about that. And create that spine and take more people off the provincial highways. And if your viewers don't know, 80% of our economic trade is through the southwestern Ontario highways of Canada. So there are significant trade routes that are getting impeded by traffic, and we need to find ways to make it easier for people to leave their cars at home and take transit systems. So I think that the order and the line and alignment isn't meeting some of the key objectives you would think the province of Ontario would have.
I hear you, but did you get a say on where that line was going to go?
You stated the question. The reality is...
He's coming around to it.
Well, on the line, we were dealing with a concept plan. And I can tell you that, for example, they chose King Street. It's 500 meters longer. It goes through their downtown. There's a narrow corridor. They have to build a new bridge. So just on the 500 meters and the bridge, there's a $72 million greater cost for that particular location. Within the impact influence area of these stations is Main Street, which is a wider street. You don't have to build another bridge, and would be a heck of a lot more feasible and get more value for the provincial tax dollar.
You're not sold on it to begin with, but even if you were sold on it, you think it's on the wrong street.
Well,
anyway.
I think it's on the wrong street. There's no question.
Well, I would have to say that respectfully, he skated the question, because the reality is our council has voted on this over 50 times. We have supported this going back to Rapid Ready 10 years back. So the councillor and the other incumbent councillors have voted on this and supported it. The only question that remained was who was going to fund it. And so when they had the announcement, and my councillor colleague was present at the announcement, the $1 billion investment, historic investment, and I have to say hats off to Premier Kathleen Wynne for believing in Hamilton, like the rest of us do, that they had that input. And look, I'm not an expert on development, but I can tell you the experts are very clear. In my ward, for instance, Steve, there has been no development for 30 years. But as soon as they announced LRT, specifically light rail, that there are massive development opportunities now in Hamilton Centre to provide density, to provide economic uplift, which helps with that shifting tax burden that's coming from suburban rural areas back into inner cities. So we're talking about redoing all of our infrastructure along this corridor. We're talking about commercial development. We're talking about residential development.
Okay, Matthew, I hear you. But one of the questions, and we're having this discussion in Toronto as well about the Scarborough subway, whether there's the ridership projections to justify spending $4 billion to build a one-stop subway. You're having these discussions all over the province.
Right.
Do you have, in your view, the potential ridership to make this thing worthwhile?
Absolutely. So I take the bus, which is also an anomaly. I'm the guy who's on that main King corridor every single day. And the average bus can only take 47 people, articulating quite a bit more. Trains 100 plus. So right now we're having people left behind along this transit route. This transit route will be able to accommodate in 2 lanes what it takes cars in 4 lanes to do. So if we're talking about equality, the answer is absolutely yes.
What's your view?
Well, I mean, first of all, when you deal with conceptual plans, that's exactly what you're dealing with. So to suggest you voted on something, let's be clear, we didn't have all the studies or all the alternative locations to be looked at, or looking at current infrastructure we can take advantage of. Matthew was not a councillor at the time when those discussions took place at council, but I can tell you very clearly that we dealt with the concept. Now the province comes in, and before the province came in, the city council actually approved what's called a rapid ready. So this is, and we had 2 transit directors that said we're not ready for transit because we don't have the ridership. I want to be clear on this ridership piece and the growth piece. So since 2004, 2006, the population of Hamilton was 504,000. It's hovering around 522,000 currently. So we've grown about, what, 19,000 people over a 10-year period. We do and process about 2,000 units a year, and we've had a pretty robust 10 years. So for us to meet the type of targets that Matthew has identified, we'd have to more than double those amount of units be developed every year, which is not practical. The other challenge, of course, is that majority of those that development, for every 8 units being developed outside of the lower city, where the LRT will be existing, there's 8 units being, for every 1 in the lower city, there's 8 being built elsewhere that doesn't get served by the LRT system.
In the suburbs, for example.
Or on the mountain, or in Waterdown, or in Dundas, or in East Mountain, or in Bimbrook. I mean, the reality is, and Ancaster. So the reality is that when you take a look at the growth, the projected growth for that corridor in the next number of years is 2,000 units.
Are you too optimistic in your growth projections?
No, they're not my growth projections. They're the growth projections by the experts. So I believe when developers, trade unions, community organizations, Chamber of Commerce, BIA, I believe when all those people, very unusual suspects, coalesce around a project, it's the right thing to do. And let's be clear, we're not in a debate in Hamilton. We are in an implementation phase. We have a subcommittee, which the councillor is on. Nobody has suggested sending this money back because I believe all the councillors recognize what's at stake. I'm hopeful that the dialogues that we're having are taking care of some of these critical issues, the cost, the operations.
Yeah, but I'm not sure the opponents of this have given up yet, and to that end, perhaps would like to have another vote of City Council in which they could overturn this. Is that fair to say?
I'll let the opposition.
Can I just, I mean, the ridership is the key, because this is about risk and value. And it was suggested the ridership is there. Let's be clear in factual numbers. The B-Line Express that currently exists there is at 98% compliance on schedule. And
this is buses.
The current bus system. Mm-hmm. There's no congestion that's projected on that Main Street corridor, and it has great capacity right till 2041 without the LRT. So you wouldn't deter or impact the timeline. So the timelines between the bus and the LRT, a $2.2 billion expenditure, by the way, not a $1.2 billion expenditure, is the same. Now, the other challenge and concern I have is that the ridership on the B line currently is 444 peak hour, peak direction, which is one of the key measurements. We've been always told that you need to be at least 2,000 to even start justifying that LRT system in your community. Now, they're projecting, and these are projections of 1,500 peak hour, peak direction. You're going from McMaster to nowhere. And most successful LRT systems go from a destination location to a destination location. And the other challenge that really frustrates me on this file is that there's no park and ride currently, and most successful LRTs have park and ride.
Okay, hold that thought, because you said McMaster to nowhere.
To nowhere.
He really blanched at that. So
yeah, I mean, to nowhere. If you want to call the hottest real estate market in southern Ontario nowhere, then do that. I know my neighborhood, for instance, has an 8.9% increase in assessment just last year. The Globe and Mail just wrote about Hamilton. The Toronto Sun, Steve, just wrote about millennials coming to Hamilton. They're not going to nowhere. They're going to the hottest real estate market in Ontario. And further to that, for those that want to reduce this conversation to strictly a conversation of riders or length or stops or the details, they're missing the point. This is a city building opportunity. This is the groundwork for a blast network that will service Councillor Whitehead's community, that will service the outlying communities. I know this because we voted together on some of these particular cases.
To that end, I want to show another map, because yours is not the only city in the province of Ontario that is going through this. We want to show another example. Maybe 20 minutes to the east of you guys. This is the Huron-Ontario LRT, which starts in Mississauga and was intended to go north, I guess from the bottom right to the top left in that shot there, to Brampton. Now, Mississauga gave it the green light. Brampton did not. Brampton City Council had a fight over the route. They wanted the LRT, but there was disagreements on council as to whether or not it should go straight up or whether it should veer off and go into the downtown. And because council did not agree with what the province was offering, they canceled it. And $300 million worth of LRT extension is now not happening, and that LRT is going to stop at Steeles Avenue and not go any further. Is that a cautionary tale for you guys?
I think absolutely. Absolutely. I think the question for me is not that there's going to be a vote to say no, but there will be a vote in regards to the operating. If I could hit the reset button today, on this file, I would. If I had an opportunity to speak to the Premier and said, you want to get the most value for $1 billion? I mean, we came in with a Rapid Ready report that indicated that we didn't have the ridership, we didn't have the alignment, and that the best approach was to build that ridership, create that alignment so that you can build towards success of a future LRT system. And we didn't do that. Premier Wynne decided not to fund that program, but to leap from a crawl to a sprint with the development of a 11-kilometer stretch of LRT. Now, the regional plan did go from a destination location, so I didn't want to be negative in the sense of saying nowhere, but let's be clear. Eastgate Mall would be a destination, McMaster would be a destination. That's why they were selected originally, and that was the original route that was decided on in those concept plans.
If the council cannot agree on this at the end of the day, and this thing does not get built, what do you think the consequences are for the city of Hamilton?
Well, it'll go down as one of the biggest mistakes that our council has made in the last 40 years. And, you know, to the point about building ridership, the challenge we've had in our city about building ridership is the city has refused to invest in transit. So to blame the Premier for not making the investments that our city council should be making every year, when we get our gas transfer tax, we're spending $3 million on transit and $77 million on roads. So there's never been a commitment from our council, a real, true, honest commitment to build ridership. And if we had over the last 10 years, we would have been far surpassed those ridership numbers.
Let me ask Terry
just on ridership, let's be careful with ridership. If you take a look, the Globe and Mail just came out with the article, I'm sure everyone's aware, $13 million, and here's the risk that I'm concerned about. So this is the road we're on now. $13 million trips dropped in the ridership in Toronto recently. They did a survey and they noted that anyone that travels over 15 minutes prefer to take, 80% of people take their car to work. So you look at Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, Portland has lost ridership, and they've invested in 25 kilometers more LRT systems, and yet the ridership is going the wrong direction. That's not a phenomenon just in Canada. That's right across North America.
So let me ask you the flip side of the question I asked him, which is if they do build this, and you're opposed to that, what do you think the consequences for Hamilton will be?
Well, I think my role right now in the next number of months is to make sure that whether it's the park and ride, all those check marks to optimize the success of the program needs to be considered and implemented. So that's what my goal and objective is for the next number of months. But if that operating cost comes forward and says that it's 3 times the cost for the same amount of people, and there's no guarantee on the ridership, and your tax is going to go up 2.5% to cover that small corridor, and I could take that 2.5% and create a robust transit system with blast networks throughout the city and serve a lot more people, I prefer to make that value statement then.
Matthew, down to my last minute here. You mentioned City Council's had dozens of votes already.
Sure.
What does it still have to finally do?
Well, there's an environmental assessment update that has to come up, and then, of course, procurement. This has to go out to contract. I mean, everybody knows there's going to be a provincial election.
So how many more months or years away is Hamilton from a final say on this?
Well, I think the final say has happened, and now we're into implementation. And so,
So you're convinced it's a done deal?
Yeah, I mean, the doomsday scenario that my colleague has put forward, I don't believe is going to be the case because there's nothing that's indicated up until this point that this is going to be the case. Metrolinx is working very closely with us. You know, the transit system that we have already, we have a new director who's very positive. And I think most of council, even as Councillor Whitehead has indicated, understands we're now working out those fine details.
So this will get built?
I believe so.
Will this get built?
Well, I think the devil's in the details when they get the operating cost. I mean, if you don't have the ridership, and that risk will be taken on by the taxpayers.
I hear all that, but do you think at the end of the day this is going to be built?
Well, I think if the ridership cost and risk to the taxpayers is affordable to the taxpayer of the community, it will be built.
Gentlemen, it's really good of you to come into TVO tonight, all the way from the Steel City, to have this very civilized debate here at TVO.
It's always great to talk about the great things happening in Hamilton, Steve.
Matthew Green, Terry
and much
Whitehead.
more. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Terry. Cheers.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.